Hi, my name is Gr.1. I'm an occupational therapist, and I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about school readiness in terms of grade 1, because now it's the time to look at if our children are ready for grade 1 or not. But this year has been so crazy with COVID and not having school for about 4 months and crazy times. So I think especially for the little ones going to grade 1 next year, it's going to be for some of them quite a challenge because I miss so a lot of the grade R that prepares them for grade 1 for next year. We always tend to focus only on the academic readiness for school, and there's so much more than just academic readiness, and I'll talk a little bit about each one of these concepts in a bit more detail. But the most important thing that we need to look at this year, especially with COVID, is if our child is emotionally ready for grade 1. Remember, this year with COVID, all structure and routine was taken away. Most children thrive with structure and routine, and everything changed this year. So a lot of them felt really anxious because they didn't know what to expect. Their whole daily routine changed. They missed their friends. Socially, it was awkward. So please have a look emotionally if your child is ready for grade 1 this year, emotionally. And how will we know this is, for example, can your child regulate their emotions? Are they very moody? Do they get angry very easily? Are they able to take criticism, constructive criticism, of course, and how do they cope with criticism? How do they cope when people tell them no? Can they follow structure and routine in the class? Can they follow the routine of the class environment? Can they partake in what the rest of the group is doing? Can they work independently? Do they still need a lot of individual attention? Because the pace in grade 1 is much more intense than the pace in grade R, and they have to work independently a lot of the time because most of the classes are too full these days. But that's not the school's fault, that's just South Africa. Children need to be able to work independently, and they have to know that the choices they make have consequences. If somebody is irritating me and I go and slap that person, it's not the other person that's going to be in trouble, it's me for slapping that person. So can I think through my actions? Okay, so emotional readiness. Can I separate from mom and dad? That's very important for grade 1. Can I manage my emotions when mommy leaves the classroom? Remember, to start grade 1 is as emotional for kids as it is for grown-ups starting a new job. And we tend to lose focus of that. So emotionally check if your child is ready, especially after this year. And then the other thing that we have to check is my child neurologically ready? And what I mean by that is my child able to concentrate for actively 20 minutes? Because most tasks in grade 1 take active concentration for 20 minutes before they can take a break. These days even longer, and most of kids that's 7 years old, is 20 minutes active concentration is about what is expected. But in the class environment these days, more time is expected from our kids, and sometimes kids is neurologically just not ready to concentrate actively for 20 minutes. And remember, now that we have neurological illnesses like ADHD or dysfunctions like ADHD and ADD, we also have to take that into account. And especially now with lockdown, where our kids spend too much time on screen time, I'm also guilty. Mommy also had to work, so what do we do that's the easiest? Is occupy them with iPads and Xboxes and TV. But that takes outside play away. And if outside play is taken away, posturally, I'm not ready to sit still. So there's a big difference between neurological readiness and postural control. But some kids are neurologically not ready to sit still and actively concentrate. Especially think of our little ones that their birthday is only after October. Most of them, my opinion is, if it's their birthday, October, November, December, anyone think of holding them back, because they need to work harder the first 6 months of every year than all of the other kids. And I mean, that's not fair. When we need to think of how my child is going to cope, emotionally, neurologically, academically, gross motor, remember, a child that only has their birthday in December writes grade 12 when they're 17. That's not fair. Imagine their marks. can vastly improve if they were kept back a year, and then we have to think of, will they be allowed into varsity? And then, so we don't just think of now, we think of in 10 years' time. With my child's grade 12 marks, being allowed to varsity, writing matric when I'm 17 versus writing matric when I'm 18. This is a long-term thought process. Okay, so if we look at the next one for grade 1 readiness, we look at social readiness. Is my child able to work as part of a group? Can my child play independently? Can my child play with friends? Can my child make new friends? Is my child able to share? I think especially for our kids that are very strong-willed, always wants to be the leader, it can be socially quite difficult to adapt because they want to be the boss all of the time. In group situations, they want to take the lead. They want to say what we want to do. And then their social skills can quite struggle a bit with that. Then, of course, we need to look at academic readiness. There we look a bit as, is your child able to follow tasks and then execute tasks, follow instructions? Are they able to do their best, not just finish as quickly as possible? Do they know their basic shapes? Do they know their basic colors? Can they build a 50-piece puzzle? Concentration for 15 minutes, end of grade R is sufficient. Can they distinguish between letters and numbers? Are they able to write their name? Is their visual perceptual skills intact? Now that's a whole different discussion that takes quite some time, but that's your building blocks for reading, writing, and maths. Then does your child know all their body parts and their functions? Can they recall 4 to 5 number in sequence? Then we also have to look at language development. How is their expressive, that's talking, their vocabulary, do they talk clearly and understandably? And then also receptive communication. Can they follow instructions? Do they understand what was asked of them? Can they follow multiple step instructions? Then we look a bit at my fine motor skills. Now I want the dynamic tripod grip. That is most efficient if you look at pencil manipulation. Can they cut a 9 centimeter square accurately on the line? Can they draw a circle, square, triangle, rectangle, oval, cross, and diamond? Can your child write their name? And can they draw a detailed picture of a man? That's just a bit of fine motor development. Then we look at gross motor development, and that's why I spoke a bit earlier about postural control. Now, postural control is underwritten by 2 systems. My proprioceptive system, which is the internal GPS of my body. There we think a lot of tasks requiring resistance and deep pressure. And then the other system responsible for postural control is my vestibular system, my balance and my movement system. Now here, it's so important to play outside, especially the first 5, 6, 7, 8 years of life. Outside play is the most important because there I get movement, I get resistance, I get deep pressure inputs. And like I just mentioned, this is so important for postural control. Now, postural control is the ability to have stability at my bigger joints, to assume and maintain different postures. Think of sitting still in a chair. Okay, so children that don't have sufficient postural control tend to be fidgety because they are craving movement, resistance, and deep pressure input. But what happens in class? Now it's told, sit still. Now the poor child is giving all their concentration for keeping an upright posture, sitting still, that they have nothing left for the teacher or for their work. So postural control and ADHD is confused a lot of the time, especially just by the symptoms because they look the same. Fidgety or busy bees. Okay, so please always make sure, don't just take your child to the GP for Ritalin. If the teacher said they're too busy, first have them assessed and look at their postural control. So important because this we can improve without medication. I'm all for medication. If a child truly is ADD or ADHD, then they cannot function without medication. But make sure it is truly ADHD, and that's why I would always recommend rather a pediatric neurologist or pediatric psychiatrist, not just a GP, to make sure it is truly ADD or ADHD before prescribing medicine. But our children need outside play, and especially this year with COVID and mommies and daddies having to work, especially the way we live in South Africa, the crime, we're scared to let our kids play outside. Some of us don't have gardens to let our kids play outside. So postural control has really taken a knock the last few years, especially with the digital age we live in and too much screen time. So please let your children play outside. It's so important to be able to sit still in class, but not just that, for skipping, jumping, hopping, ball skills, all of that is incorporated and just as important as academical readiness. The last thing to quickly just speak about, because I see I've spoken 10 minutes already, is my sensory integration. So we have 7 senses. We all know about the 5, but I quickly explain about my vestibular system and my proprioceptive system. Now, all these systems need to be able to modulate themselves to be able to function in an environment. So what I mean by that, by modulation, is to adapt to the environment. But some of children's sensory systems and adults overreact or underreact. What I mean by that is, if we look at the sound system or the auditive system, is if I overreact to sound input, all sounds is equally important. Teacher's voice, a child coughing, a child whispering, the lawnmower outside. If a child overreacts to sound input, all of those sounds is equally important, so they don't know how to focus on the teacher because everything is equally important. Now it can look like a concentration difficulty, but they're actually overreacting to sound input. Or a child can underreact to a sensory system. That means, Carla, 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 woo, somebody is talking to me. Again, can look like a concentration problem, but the child actually under-responds to sound input. And then these children tend to lose some of the instructions teachers give because they don't always realize instructions are being given. So I quickly spoke about all of these. I can go into a lot more depth, but there's no time now. But please, 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 for me the most important thing is if a child is not ready for grade 1, please rather keep them back in grade R. It's a more playful environment. No marks are given yet. So a child's self-esteem don't suffer when they're kept back in grade R if done correctly and nicely. But in grade 1, they start getting marks. Then they see, I'm not coping. They start to feel dumb. Marks become an issue for the other kids in class. So self-esteem, emotionally, they suffer more when kept back in grade 1. So please, please, if a child's teacher tells you think they're not ready, or you as a mother in your heart feel they're not ready, please take them for an assessment with an occupational therapist that can help you with this. If you need to contact me, my number is 084 581 0644. I'm based in Hennep's Park in Centurion. You can also have a look about this talk on my website. It's www.carlagrobler.co.za, just to go through the notes again to see, is my child ready? Or you can email me at Carla with a C, carla.grobler@vodamal.co.za. Hope you have a nice day. Bye.